Aloha. Welcome to Lease Seminars sessions. Today we're going to talk about what happens if your business is not going well and the lease that you have with a landlord for commercial property is not going well and you can't make the payments. Now what do you do? And it does happen. Because I don't know if you know, but they say that a lot of businesses fail in the first year or two or three of business. And it's fortunate when a business owner lasts 3 or 4 or 5 years and goes on beyond, say, 5 or 10 years. So the longevity, the lifespan of a business is pretty short. Same with a lease, because you're leasing the space with business that you hope will be making you money. So let's take an example. I have my real estate school, and I mentioned to you before that I had 1,800 square feet, and we could seat about 70 students in a live class. We have now gone virtual, and we don't use a classroom anymore. We do it out of a camera and an office and a laptop. All right? So let's say the space that I'm using is not very good and I can't make the payment. So I go to the landlord and say, hey, my business isn't going well and I can't make the payments. Do you think you can find another tenant to take my place? If the landlord finds someone else to replace me, that 1,800 square feet, I'm going to be doing what we call an assignment of lease. So I'm going to assign my 1,800 square foot lease. Then let's say there's 3 years left. I can assign it to someone else for 3 years, and they're going to take over my spot. Now, there's some danger to this thing. If I assign my lease and the new assignee doesn't do well and doesn't make the payments, can the landlord come after me? Because I'm the assignor. I'm the one that primarily signed the contract. If the landlord does not give me what they call novation, which is a release of liability, the landlord can come after me if the assignee that took my space goes belly up. If the landlord gives me a novation and relieves me of my liability, then I'm free and clear. So the assignment is, will the landlord relieve me of my liability? Some landlords will not relieve me, because the more people they have at the party, the more people they can go after for payment of the defaulted rents. All right? So assignment is usually for the whole space, and it's either with novation or with subject to no novation. So that's one. Assignment is the whole space. Let's say my business is okay, but I don't need 1,800 square feet. I don't need to pay $8,000 a month. I can afford $4,000 and maybe take half the space, 900 square feet. So I tell the landlord, hey, look, can I sublease part of my space? Oh, what does that mean? Well, I have somebody that's willing to take 900 square feet and their business is, say, in stocks or insurance or some retail operation or whatever it happens to be, accounting, law work or whatever. And the landlord says, well, the mix might be okay and the tenant might be a good fit for our building. And so if I sublease the space, then I'm still on the hook for the 1,800 square feet. I chop it in half and put some partition walls, new doors with the landlord's approval. And the new tenant is going to pay me half the rent or whatever we agree on. Then I'll pay the other half and pay the landlord the full rent. And let's say it's $8,000. If the sublessee defaults and doesn't pay me, I'm still on the hook. So whatever happens in a sublease, I'm still primarily responsible. But I can sublease it to somebody to take at least part or a large, some part of the space. Okay, so in this case, the example I gave you was half-half. 900 square feet at $4,000, and then I could pay the other $4,000. All right? So that's what they call a sublease. I'm still on the hook. What they call an option is, in the contract, the landlord might say, hey, you're a really good tenant and you got a 5-year lease. Would you like to have an option for another 5 or 2 5-year periods so that when the lease is over, that you have the first right of refusal to extend the lease? Now, I'm not going to buy the property because they're not selling the whole building, but they would give me the first right of refusal to lease and extend my lease for another 5-year period or 2 5-year periods. And that's called an option. So in that case, I don't have any really special privileges. It's just that I can keep my space, keep my business going, and I have the first right of refusal to lease and extend that lease. Now, does that mean that the landlord has to give it to me? Probably not. If someone else wanted the whole floor and my space was in the way, they'd probably ask me to leave because they want to give it to a bigger tenant that's going to pay more rent. All right? Remember, it's all about capitalism. Who's going to give us the best rents and who's the most stable tenant? So now we have assignment. We assign the whole space, 1,800 square feet, and there's either novation, freedom of responsibility for me as a assignor, or subject to, which means I'm still on the hook. And if it's a sublease where I rent part of my space, then the sublessee pays me, and then I pay the full rent to the landlord. Okay? I'm still on the hook. And then the option is just the first right of refusal to continue the lease with the landlord. And I have first right to extend that lease. So hopefully you'll understand the assignment, sublease, and options. Hope this helps. Aloha.